Welcome to USTRAD, the USI Strategic Dialogue series, where we highlight and analyze current and emerging strategic issues through short video interactions with renowned strategic experts. I am Group Captain Sharat Tiwari, your host for today's episode of USTRAD. With me, I have a highly decorated and experienced senior veteran air officer, Air Marshal Anil Chopra, who is considered a foremost authority on military aviation. He has recently authored a book on China's aerospace. The book has a chapter fully devoted onto China-Pakistan aerospace nexus. He would take on the issues related to China-Pakistan aerospace nexus and of course its implications for India. Welcome to USTRAD.
Thank you. Thank you.
So whenever we talk of China-Pakistan relationship, in diplomatic terms, lofty adjectives like higher than the mountains, deeper than the ocean, or all-weather strategic cooperative partners, allies, are used to describe their special relationship. But to my mind, it becomes more critical because of the defense rather than the economic connect of the relationship. What is the background to the China-Pakistan aviation nexus? Could you highlight, sir?
Thank you, Sharat, for inviting me, and thanks to USI for making me the first speaker to interview on this important strategic dialogue that you all have started. And I really wish the USI all the very best for carrying out this series of dialogues that will educate the people who will get the chance to watch these videos. As you very rightly brought out, Sharat, that a lot of statements have been made about the relationship between China and Pakistan. Most of these have come from the Pakistani side, their generals, their prime ministers who have said used all kinds of adjectives to explain this relationship. It is important for us to look at first the historic background as to how this relationship built up. Because from there will flow the other issues, cooperation, military cooperation, etc. See, if you look at in 1947, India got partitioned, Pakistan got created. Unfortunately, it was a violent kind of creation. Nearly 10 million people moved side. Nearly 1 million people died in this whole exercise. And immediately after that, the Pakistani side tried to wrest Kashmir through military action. And in 47-48, India and Pakistan had an extended period of war for India to retrieve back the areas that Pakistan had taken. Around the same time, that is in 1949, we found that the Chinese PRC, that is People's Republic of China, got formed in 1949, again through a revolution. So that, and again through an upheaval in China, where the Maoists, the communists under Mao, Chairman Mao, came to power. So these two events happened very close to each other in 1947-49. And as the Chinese government settled down, they were very clear. Mao made a statement that power flows from the barrel of a gun. So that was the kind of approach China was having from the day one. And meantime, Pakistan wanted to secure itself, so they chose to join the Americans, and they signed these Seato and CENTO treaties. They became part of the American, power groups. But in 1958, Pakistan went through a coup. That means military generals took over the country. Now we had a situation around India, India's main borders with Pakistan and China, two countries, both autocratic, both believing in the power of gun. And this is the situation in which we approached the 1960s. And in 1962, we had the war with China, and part of our Ladakh area, the Aksai Chin, was taken away by the Chinese. Now, the Pakistanis saw this as an opportunity. Pakistan felt that enemy's enemy can be a friend. And that is what they did. And in 63 itself, within a year of this war, they ceded nearly 5,000 kilometers of Ladakh area called the Karakoram Tract to the Chinese. And a sort of a relationship started building up. Having seen that China had an upper hand in 62 war, the Pakistanis made an adventurous attempt in 1965 to wrest Kashmir from India. Unfortunately for them, they failed badly. India had an upper hand. And the Chinese in this war did not take sides. So the relationship between China and Pakistan had still to evolve. But in 65 onwards, the Chinese started helping Pakistan with arms supplies. We will talk about these arms supplies in a greater detail a little later. Then we had the 71 war, in which Pakistan got split. India helped the creation of Bangladesh. It became called the Bangladesh Liberation War. Now, Pakistan was really shaken up after this war, and they went to the Chinese. Now, in 71 war again, the Chinese did not physically intervene in favor of Pakistan. Though the Americans came to support, they brought their naval ships, the Enterprise aircraft carrier, into Bay of Bengal. But the Chinese did not support Pakistan in this whole exercise. But immediately after 71 war, that is in 1973, they signed a strategic alliance treaty with China, and that is when serious geopolitical and military relationships started getting built. And in 1978, the Chinese built the Karakoram Highway. Now this connects the Xinjiang province of China to Pakistan, North Pakistan. And that was a big strategic, build up for India, because the road was passing, it was connecting to neighbors who were not friendly with us, and the road was passing through Kashmir, which India was claiming to be ours. So, 78 this got formed, and in the 80s, the Pakistanis, Chinese started helping Pakistan set up defense industry. Again, more about this we will talk a little later. But they continued to get arms from the Americans. They got the F-16s, they had the French Mirages, and then when the Americans came to know that they are working on a nuclear weapon, in 1990, when the Pressler Amendment came, the Americans immediately cut down on spares and supplies for the F-16. And that is the time when the Pakistanis physically moved closer to China, because they realized that the Americans could sort of hold back any time, despite the aid, etc., they were giving. In 2001, when the WTC, that is 9/11 happened, WTC attack happened, the Americans realized the impact of terrorism and how the Pakistanis have been backing the terrorist movement, and that is the time the strain between Americans and the Pakistanis increased, And subsequently, we all know in 2011, the Americans had to extricate Osama bin Laden from Pakistan. It was in their cantonment. Interestingly, around this time, Pakistan and China had reached a point that they had started doing military exercises. So we will talk about all this a little later. And now, just to sum up the historical background, I must tell you that in last decade, the total trade between Pakistan and China is increased to the extent that China is the biggest trading partner for Pakistan today. Though the trade is imbalanced, nearly 12 billion is sold by the Chinese to Pakistanis, and Pakistanis return back only $1.5 billion. Also in the last decade, the Chinese have become the biggest arms suppliers to the Pakistanis. But today, in last 8 years, nearly $7 billion worth of arms have been transferred by China to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has been, they're supporting each other. China supports Pakistan in Kashmir, and Pakistan supports Chinese cause, whether it's in Taiwan, it's in Tibet, whether it's in Xinjiang. So both of them support each other, and Chinese are using Pakistan as a conduit to the Muslim world. Despite what the Chinese are doing to the Muslims in Xinjiang, the Pakistanis have been wanting to come close to there's a dichotomy. Normally the Islamic world and the communists, they can't be friends, but here is a situation where they are trying to become friends. And lastly, I want to mention that since China is interested in getting closer to Africa and to the oil nations in the Middle East, they signed this CPEC, the China-Pakistan economic corridor, worth close to 60 billion plus. And they are helping build roads, railway lines, and will lay pipelines. And also Pakistan has given them the Gwadar port, which is a deep water port, to the Chinese on a long lease. So this is the background in which the geopolitical situation in the region and relations between Pakistan and China have evolved.
Thank you very much for your elucidation, sir. So could you also throw some light on the evaluation of military production part of Sino-Pak relationships?
Yeah, Sharad, as I was mentioning that in 65 they started transferring military equipments. You must understand that China realized it in 50s itself, that it's important to become self-reliant on defense. So in 50s itself, initially they set up their own industry with the help of Russians, who gave them license to produce hardware, whether it's ships, tanks or aeroplanes in China. After China had started making a lot of items on license production, they started stripping foreign aircraft and ships, and then started reverse engineering to become independent of those countries, especially Russia or Soviet Union, to start making. Yeah, so once the Chinese started reverse engineering the Soviet designs, they became independent of them in defense production. Now, when you produce, it is important for you to get markets. So they started going out, and they found that Asia, the relatively poorer countries in Asia, are the best place to market there, because mostly their goods were low-end, low-technology defense products. So Pakistan was the first country in which the Chinese chose to start supplying defense equipment. And I will talk about what all they supplied in greater detail, but I briefly want to mention many types of aeroplanes they supplied. They helped them, they supplied them Chinese-made ships. They helped them set up, first they upgraded the ordnance factory at Wah, that is near Rawalpindi. Then they helped them set up a munitions factory. This helped them set up the PAC, that is the Pakistan Aeronautical Complex, in Kamra, which is again not too far from Rawalpindi, where the action is, because I must tell you that Rawalpindi is the headquarters of the Pakistan Army. So all these facilities have come up not far from there. Chinese helped them in missile technology. They gave them special steels. The Chinese gave Pakistan the technology for the SRBM, short-range ballistic missiles. They helped them in the various missile programs they had, whether it was Hataf or Shaheen or various other systems. More recently, they have helped them in submarines. In fact, 8 modern submarines are going to be supplied to Pakistan. 4 of them will be built in China. 4 will be built with the help of Chinese in Pakistan. This whole process will take place between now and 2027. They are supplying them air defense systems, and we will of course talk about the aerospace part separately. So Chinese wanted a market. Pakistan was their starting point. The goods were relatively low end, the goods were cheap, and many of these countries could afford it. From here, they have then moved to Sri Lanka, to Myanmar, to Malaysia, to the African countries where the Chinese have been able to start supplying. So effectively, a point will come in the near future as the F-16s and the Mirages, they finish their life, the bulk of the Pakistan military will be of Chinese origin.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned aerospace. Now, aerospace is often considered a crown jewel of their relationship. Air Marshal, can you also throw some light on the evaluation of aerospace aspect of their relationship?
Yeah, Group Captain Sharath, you very correctly said that the crown jewel of this relationship is aerospace. Why I say that is that the total transfers that they have done. For example, for Army, they have transferred them the MBT 2000, which is called El Khalid, which is a Chinese version of the T-90. But that's it. Thereafter, the bulk of other things that have come, they are from you know, the Air Force. 1965 was the first transfer. In that, they gave this aircraft called F-6. Now, F-6 is a MiG-19 air defense version. They also, around the same time, gave H-5, which is a Chinese variant of IL-28. IL-28. Yeah. Now, they gave close to 250, 260 F-6s, that is air defense versions of the MiG-19. Thereafter, they gave them A-5s. Now, A-5 is the strike variant of MiG-19. So, they gave about 55 of these. And then they came to F-7, which is the Chinese variant of MiG-21. So, and these were also given large numbers, close to 180 to 200, some numbers like that they transferred. So, you see these aeroplanes, and then came the JF-17, which is being transferred in large numbers. It's a joint project. JF stands for Joint Fighter. So, a large number of JF-17s have been given. We will talk about JF-17's capabilities a little later. Now, I also want to tell you how did the Chinese industry evolve. You know, they did you know, transfer of technology, reverse engineering, which I had spoken of. But they also did a project with the Israelis. You remember that Israelis were doing a project called Lavi. They were making an aircraft on their own, but later on they found that you know, it was becoming expensive, and so they offered to the Chinese, when the relations between China and America were relatively good, to do a joint project. Now, that joint project subsequently, when differences between America and China increased, had to be called off, and that whatever the Chinese had learned in that joint project, from there came an aircraft called J-10. J-10, Chinese have got close to 500 J-10s today. It is a delta wing aircraft with canards in front, and it is it's their main aircraft of the Chinese today, mid-end aircraft. Whatever technologies they had learned from that aircraft J-10, they wanted to utilize it to make an aeroplane which will be purely their own, and that was JF-17. Now JF-17 is being made in Chengdu plant of China, and they initially started making it. It was called the FC-1, Xiaolong was what they used to call it. But later on they realized that that aircraft not good enough for their own country. So they offered this to Pakistan, and then Pakistan joined in 2007, and from there this aircraft project has taken off. We will talk about JF-17 because this is among the aerospace, the crown jewel is the JF-17. So we will need to talk about JF-17 a little greater length. So this is how the relationship has come. They have supplied not only the fighters, they have given them UAVs. They have given them armed UAVs which can deliver PGMs. They have given them some transport aircraft. The 6 AWACS Chinese have given ZDK-03 is the number which they have given to these guys. They have also given air-to-air missiles. They have given this SD-10, which is also called the PL-12. They have given nearly 600 of them, which has come with the JF-7. So the earlier missiles, PL-5, which was close to the Magic 2. So a lot of weapons asset have also been transferred along with these aeroplanes to Pakistan.
Thank you. Since you talked of Joint Fighter 17, we often hear that JF-17 aircraft program is a big success story of Sino-Pak Aviation Nexus. In your view, is it a fact or a perception propaganda?
Yeah, actually, if I may use the word, both. Okay. But first let us look at the aircraft purely as a professional. JF-17, as I said, has evolved from the technologies that they had imbibed during the J-10 development. JF-17 is a single engine, single cockpit fighter with multi-role capabilities. It is specially designed for interception, reconnaissance, and air-to-ground work. These are the 3 areas. They are also for maritime strike. So it is a fly-by-wire. Initially, it was an analog fly-by-wire aircraft. It can go up to Mach 1.6 or so. So it is an aircraft which was designed more or less as a replacement for MiG-21. They had, as I said, 2001, the first prototype had been flown by the Chinese in Chengdu. Interestingly, 2001 is the year in which we did the first flight on our own LCA in India. So, but by 2007, they had realized that Chinese have no interest in that aircraft. So they made this offer. In 2007, Pakistanis joined it. But at that stage, though it is called a joint fighter, the fighter development had already been concluded to a point that the aircraft was already test flying. So 2007 to 2010, they started making aeroplanes specifically for Pakistan. Okay. And 2010, physical delivery started. Now 2010, physical delivery started of JF-17s to Pakistan. And now we are in 2020. And what all else happened to JF-17? Since they had taken a modular approach, initially there was a Doppler radar, which was a Chinese radar called KLJ-7, which was their radar on the JF-17. Subsequently, they started upgrading. So you had Block 1, which is what the Pakistanis initially got. Then after some time, after they had got about 70 aircraft, they started making Block 2. Now in Block 2, what they did is they added air-to-air refueling, some other features they came in. And another 50 aircraft of Block 2 came to Pakistan. By now, the aircraft were also becoming due for overhaul. So Pakistani aircraft started going, and the first round of overhaul has just finished last year, and the overall aircraft have also rejoined. But meanwhile, the Chinese were working further on the JF-17, and they last year flew the Block 3, which is the latest variant. Block 3 has got an ISA radar, active, electronically scanned array radar. It has electronic warfare, modern electronic warfare suite. It has got IRST, the IR search and track system, which has got introduced. It has now digital fly-by-wire. Okay. So a lot of improvements came up. They also came out with a variant with the second seat. Now, why this second seat is because they felt that there was a need for a WSO like you have in Su-30s. You need a WSO who will sit in the rear seat and operate the weapons. They also integrated many more modern weapons, whether it was PGMs, anti-shipping weapons. There were 3 different types of anti-shipping weapons, both subsonic and supersonic. So a lot of weapons got integrated, and Chinese claim that they have given some pseudo stealth capability to this aircraft, which it is difficult for us to understand. Sure. And how could they have given this kind of a stealth? So Block 2s are starting to induct. The target is to have 50 Block 2 aircraft by 2024. Also by 2024, they will get around 24 two-seaters, that is called the JF-17B. B is for the trainer is normally designated as B. So this is how the JF-17, and I must tell you that today they already have 6 squadrons of JF-17s. A point will happen few years down the line that they may have close to 300 JF-17s. So that is the way JF-17s are going, and I must tell you that JF-17s already sold to Nigeria, few numbers, 3-4 of them for the time being, but more will be ordered. They've also got a contract with the Myanmar. They will be supplying to them. Whole host of other countries who are interested in JF-17s include Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and Malaysia in Asia. Then there are Iran, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, many other countries in Africa are looking at JF-17s. They are prospective customers. The Chinese are trying to sell JF-17s by cheap loans, inducements, political favors, etc., etc. And I want to lastly mention about JF-17 that it's a joint fighter. Bulk of the high-end work is being done in China, but airframe wise, 58% of the work is being done in Pakistan. 58%. So 42% China, but high-end. Now the engine is a Russian engine. They have Russians have cleared 400 total engines. This is the same engine which is there on our MiG-29s, RD-93. That's the engine which is there on that aircraft. But subsequently, the Chinese are developing an engine of their own, which they will replace it later, but we do not know when, because the engine is still not ready. So this is the big picture of how. So when they sell these aircraft to the African and Asian nations, it is also a boost to the Pakistani industry, because it's a joint project. So both China and Pakistan will gain from this. Yeah.
So when you consider the success story of JF-17, one can't avoid its comparison with India's own Tejas light combat aircraft, which has been designed by the Aeronautical Design
Development Authority,
in collaboration with the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited.
Yeah.
So what's your take on it?
Yeah, this is a question which is being asked by or discussed by defense analysts around the world. because LCA is India's LCA Tejas light combat aircraft is considered one of the lightest fighters, modern fighters in the world. And there is a comparison between the two because India, China, Pakistan, they have their own dynamics. So this discussion has to take place. Firstly, I must tell you that LCA is a single country project. And JF-17 is a two-country project, and that has its own little, implications and dynamics. But let's grant some things to the JF-17 first. It first flew in 2001, the original one which was to be kept by the Chinese, but then 2007 the Pakistanis came in, and as I said 2010 the supply started. We have also done our first flight in 2001. Now Pakistanis already got close to 130 aircraft, and they formed 6 squadrons. For Indian Air Force, only the second squadron has just been formed. Only 24 aircraft have physically arrived. Now look at the production rate. The JF-17 current production rate capability is 25 aircraft a year, but physically they are making close to 16. Whereas in India, the capability is currently only 12. So there is a big capability difference. The number of squadrons, as I mentioned, big difference. Now, let me also say some plus points about LCA. LCA is 70% composites. The engine with the JF-17 is a Russian engine, RD-93, and we are using that on our MiG-29. So we know that there are maintainability and serviceability issues of that engine. So that's a big drawback for the JF-17. Whereas we are using the F-404, and subsequently we'll use the F-414G engine, American, highly reliable, worldwide, everybody knows about it. There is a saying about these two aircraft that JF-17 is an aircraft of today and LCA is an aircraft for the future. Because LCA will subsequently have other variants, Mark 1A, the LCA Mark 2. So there will be more variants of LCA coming up. So LCA is a wing design which is modern wing design, whereas the JF-17 wing design is a cut and paste of other aeroplanes. So LCA will see us through much longer time. Now, the last point I want to mention here is about the costs. JF-17 costs have got reduced because they borrowed technologies from the J-10, which the Chinese were already working on, whereas for us, the costs had to be incurred. So there is LCA is slightly more expensive. But I must tell you, the newer variant, the Block 2 of the JF-17 and Block 3, the costs are quite high. They are higher than the base model LCA. Of course, by the time we make 1A and 2, we may again overshoot in terms of cost. But most of the time when the Chinese are selling the aircraft, whether through Pakistan or themselves, they are having some political clauses, whereas when India will sell, the people are willing to pay a little extra money because India will not arm twist those countries or try to take any political long-term advantage. So this is the way you must look at the LCA and JF-17. Undoubtedly, we must grant the Pakistanis and the Chinese for having produced such large number of aircraft and filled up the Pakistan Air Force and the maritime role. And now with the Block 3, they will get the PL-15 missile, which they claim is close to the Meteor. The whole world is trying to understand this missile, and there are many analysts who feel it will be close to Meteor. There are others who are questioning such claims because the Chinese are known for psyops, if I may use that word. So this is how we must compare the two aircraft. LCA will be much more reliable, the serviceability will be much higher, they will be, but we need to scale up, India needs to scale up the production to at least 16 aircraft a year for the program to progress further. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for such a beautiful detailed explanation, sir. The 9th Joint air exercises Pakistan-China Shaheen 9 concluded recently. And on that occasion, the Pak Air Force Chief has said words to the effect that due to the existing global security scenario, coupled with the evolving dynamics of air warfare, calls for greater Pakistan-China cooperation. In your view, does India-China standoff in Ladakh, in the northern sector, and of course induction of Rafale make these exercises more special or more complicated?
Yeah, you know, look, Sharad, I must tell you that the Chinese and Pakistanis, they started these series called Shaheen exercises in 2011 when they did the first exercise called Shaheen 1. Now, Shaheen means eagle. So, some name, you know, they chose Shaheen to be the name for this series. Now, you know, China has not been doing very many exercises with the outside air forces. In fact, China's air force has done exercise perhaps only with Pakistan. And these are these Shaheen series that we are talking about. But Pakistan has been doing exercises with many air forces. They do with Middle East air forces, they do with Turkey, they do with Americans, they have done with many other European countries. So Pakistani Air Force has much greater experience. Now, but China is supplying the equipment. So there are, both sides have some interest, they had some interest in doing these exercises. First was to improve interoperability. Yes. So that the two air forces, that means if they were to fight jointly. They should be able to do it. Their second aim in the Shaheen 1 itself was how to handle mutual threats. That means again implying that there will be a common threat and there will be need for interoperability. What type of exercise? So first exercise Shaheen 1 was done in Pakistan, and every alternate exercise done Pakistan and China. The first exercise in China, that was Shaheen 2, was in Hotan. Now where is Hotan? Hotan is come to limelight in public domain during this Ladakh face-off, because Hotan is one of the closest major air bases, capability of taking on close to 70 aircraft, closest to Ladakh. So Hotan. So Chinese have always done the exercise mostly in Hotan. One odd time they had it in some other base. And Pakistan, of course, chose sometimes Rafiki, some different places they have operated on. What are the types of exercise they have done? They have done air defense exercises, dissimilar combat, they have done strike missions, live firing, they have done recce, they have done a variety of types of exercises. Logistic support, they have done logistic support exercises. Yeah. What have they used? Pakistanis have used the F-7 earlier, that was the MiG-21 class. They have used the Mirage 3s. They have used the JF-17s more recently. But they have not used the F-16. Why? Because the Americans won't want the F-16s to be used in such exercise with the Chinese. Okay. But F-16s have been used with the exercises in Europe, in Middle East, etc. by the Pakistanis. So that is as far as the types of aircraft that were used. What are the advantages to each other? You know, the Chinese have used initially the F-7, then they brought in, J-10 has been there all through, in all exercises, till the 9th exercise, J-10. They also used J-11 in the last few exercises. J-11 is equivalent to Su-30 type. It's a Su-27 variant. Yeah. So, when they use these aircraft, so Chinese gained from Pakistani experience of having fought with the many Western countries. The Pakistanis gained for having done combat with the equivalent of Su-30, not equivalent, but something similar to Su-30. So they have got a chance to carry out these exercises. And The last exercise, Hotan, was immediately after the abrogation of 370 in JNK. And that time there was a lot of, both the sides were trying to hype this in media, that exercise which was in Hotan. And of course, now is an exercise which has Shaheen 9, which has taken place when we are having a standoff in Ladakh. There have been occasions when Chinese aircraft have been transiting through, Pakistan, even to go to Hotan. They have landed sometimes in Skadu. Skadu is in Ladakh. Yes. So they have been working very, very closely with each other. But the world is monitoring. The Americans are trying to keep to hold the belt of the Pakistani Air Force from the back, because they still have influence over them. But it's a cause of concern. We need to watch out. We need to acknowledge that such exercises are going on. Yeah.
That brings us to the last issue, sir. Can you elaborate on the implications and options for India of China-Pakistan aviation nexus, more so in context of two-front war scenarios?
Yeah, a lot of people have been speaking in India and abroad, have been speaking about the two-front war. We have heard the service chiefs, we have heard the CDS speak of the possibility of two-front war, and that India needs to prepare. Indian defense ministers have made such statements in the parliament that India has to be prepared for two-front war, or India is prepared for a two-front war. So, first thing is that there is a two-front war scenario being talked of and being factored for many years. Each service has carried out independent exercises and joint exercises featuring a two-front war scenario. Whether a two-front war, full-fledged war, will take place between three nuclear-powered countries is a big question mark.
Yes.
After the India and Pakistan became nuclear, the only war we had was the Kargil war, in which it remained extremely localized. Because if it had become a full-fledged war, there was a risk of a nuclear showdown. Similarly, would China, a bigger power than India, want to have a scenario where they will ask Pakistan to support? Unlikely. China will not want Pakistan to come into war between India and China. China is also conscious that if it has to be a rising future power, which it is aspiring and working towards, they cannot afford a full-fledged war. Third reason why a full-fledged war cannot take place in current scenario is that Chinese got their hands full, Taiwan and Japan, and the pressure that Quad is trying to bring in by doing joint exercise. So, this is a scenario. Notwithstanding, the Indian armed forces have to prepare for a two-front war. Now, let us have a look at what is in place on the ground. Aircraft-wise, the Chinese have got close to 1,700 fighter aircraft, out of which at least 800 are fourth generation plus. So, that is the Chinese strength. The Pakistanis have got close to 400 combat aircraft and another 200 support aircraft. So, about 18-19 squadrons. Indian Air Force, unfortunately, is down to 30 squadrons. 30 squadrons means around 650 aircraft or something like that. So, in numbers wise, for India, the immediate first concern is to build up the combat strength of the Air Force back to at least 42 squadrons, which is the numbers which the country has authorized, to the Air Force. There are analysts who feel that we should build up to even more if you want to cater for a two-front war, and that number people are speaking close to 50. But honestly, the kind of funds available, the costs of aeroplanes, we know what the cost of aeroplanes is after we bought Rafale. It will take us at least till 2035 to 2038 to first build back the 42 squadrons, because there are many others which will sort of, retire, many other aircraft will retire. So, first requirement is we need to build up. Second is, let us look at the ground infrastructure. The Chinese have got 8 airfields in Tibet. Another 2, 3 more are coming up. They have got at least 2 major airfields in Xinjiang, that is Kashgar and Hotan. So that is there. Now, Indian Air Force on the other, and all these airfields at high altitude. Indian Air Force on the other hand has got close to 25 airfields facing China, all at lower altitude. And on high altitude has got its penalty in terms of, weapon carriage, fuel, etc. Payload. But Chinese have also got some airfields, not some, couple of them, in the Chengdu region, east of Myanmar. So if a full-fledged war was to take place, they will use those airfields and overfly Myanmar with or without permission. So the first is to explain the airfield layout. Similarly for Pakistan, we have got over 20 air bases looking at Pakistan. So we are, whereas total number of fighter bases in Pakistan is only 13. So this is the general scenario. As far as airfields are concerned, we are good. Infrastructure is coming up in the eastern sector also. We have, built up, modernized the infrastructure, but this is an ongoing process, and this infrastructure build up must continue. So we have looked at the aircraft. We have looked at the force multipliers. The Chinese have invested a lot of money in air refuelers and AWACS, and they are investing in many more. They have also invested a lot of money in UAVs. They are invested in surface-to-surface missiles. They invested heavily in cruise missiles. They have a bomber. Indian Air Force doesn't have a bomber. They have got about 90 of them serviceable as of now, and they can carry 6 cruise missiles. But then the Indian Air Force is already got BrahMos. The Army has got BrahMos. So there are many other missiles which have come with the Rafale. So as of today, for a regional war, the number of airfields available to Indian Air Force for Ladakh is 10. Vis-a-vis China, 3. 3 out of 3, Gargunza, it's a very high altitude, it's higher than Leh. And the other 2, Hotan, which is at about 4,500 feet. And of course, Kashgar is much lower, but it's farther, 600 kilometers from there. So that is the kind of scenario that is there on the ground. What we must do, as I mentioned, get the fighter squadrons up. We need to have quickly get the LCA going, the AMCA going. We need to push that program. We need to invest quickly in FRAs and AWACS, which the government is taking some actions on both these fronts, and get more weapons, because weapons are going to be crucial. Any skirmish with China, initial gains will be critical. Indian Air Force will have a great role to play in support of Army. So you have attack helicopters already there. You've got various other transport fleet already there. You have the transport helicopters, the Chinooks, which are already flying. So if push comes to shove and the war has to start, Indian Air Force is better off in a localized war today in Ladakh, from a point of view of number of aeroplanes, number of sorties that we can generate, number of airfields that we have got. We are in a better, but I always caution as a professional that we must never underestimate your enemy. Undoubtedly the amount of money the Chinese can pump in is much more. They may have localized restrictions, but they can move more and more things from elsewhere. And therefore, we must be doubly prepared for any contingency that may take place against China. Yes.
Our gratitude, Air Marshal Chopra, for such insightful views. I'm sure our viewers will be greatly benefited by today's interaction. Before we end, can you tell us more about your recent book for the benefit of our viewers?
Yeah, I recently wrote this book, China, the Rising Aerospace Power, Implications for India. It was a book which was a research project given to me by USI, the institute for which I am presently doing this interview. The subject was extremely topical. There undoubtedly the entire world is looking at the aerospace rise of China. Chinese, like the Americans, realized very early that one who controls aerospace controls this planet. Now, keeping that in mind, and the fact that they have got so many projects. You see, they have got J-20 stealth program, nearly 50, I believe, have been inducted. They have the J-31, which is still under development. They have 2 aircraft carriers, they want to have 6, that means more air power will come in. They're already having large transport aircraft, which is they're building in larger numbers. They are already having attack helicopters, which they are building on their own. And they have got a future stealth bomber that is coming up. So it was very important for the world to understand what all is coming. So in this book, I have tried to highlight first the primacy of aerospace power, which the whole world has understood for the last 20, 30 years, that air power is extremely important. Then I have talked about the rise of China's military. Then I have talked about the Chinese aircraft industry, which has been pumped in with lots of money, including research. Then I have spoken of the PLAF, that is the People's Liberation Army Air Force, and its strengths, its structure, the new brigade structure, the new theatre structures that they have come up. So I have talked at length. There is a separate chapter on PLAF. There are also large amount of air assets with the People's Liberation Army and Navy, with a separate chapter on these 2 agencies. And then I have looked at the scenarios that will take place between India and China. That means the air war across the Himalayas. And the last chapter covers the overall options available for India, whether it's military options, whether it's diplomatic and strategic, geostrategic options that India can exercise. The book is around 300 pages. I've tried to make it a research document for scholars to be able to read and quote. And there are references to a large number of studies done by various agencies and various important thinkers and scholars who have written about China. So that is the book is available online with different portals, Amazon, Flipkart, everywhere. It has been published by Pentagon Press, which is one of the good presses. So I hope the people will be able to grab this book and enjoy reading about what China's air power is all about.
Thank you very much, Master Chopra, for sparing your time for USTRAT. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.